info. If you need a translation, we have translation in German, English, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, and Romanian. You can see the numbers. German 1, English 2, French 3, Italian 4, Spanish 8, Portuguese 9, Polish 18, and Romanian 22. Okay? And as I mentioned, it's a great honor to welcome you all to this vital discussion on the pressing issues of media freedom, the rise of disinformation, and the future of our democracies. Let me be very clear. This is not just a challenge. It is a fight for democracy itself. We are speaking about this. We are speaking about democracy and how we can defend the democracy. A free and independent press is not a privilege. It's the foundation of democracy. When journalists are silenced, injustice grows. When the freedom of the press is weakened, democracy itself is in danger. This is why we, as a progressive, strongly defend press freedom. We stand with journalists who risk their lives to tell the truth. We stand against disinformation campaigns that try to deceive and confuse people. And we stand for a society where people can make decisions based on facts, not lies. But make no mistake, our right to know the truth, to ask a question, and to challenge false information, it's today under attack. This is why today's discussions are more urgent than ever. The panels we are discussing today, the importance of media freedom in Europe and the challenge for young people in the age of online disinformation and foreign interference are not just academic talks. They are about the future of our societies, our basic right, and our democracy. So let today not be just another conversation, let it be a call to action. It's the moment to action now. We can speak, we can discuss, we can exchange a lot here in this room, here in this building, but this cannot be only the only action. We have to do more, and we have to be more active. A call to protect journalists from threats and violence. A call to fight disinformation with truth, transparency, and integrity. A call to teach citizens media literacy so they can tell the difference between lies and the truth. This is a challenge we must meet together, no exceptions. The S&D Group has always been leading this fight and will continue to do so. We will keep defending press freedom, demand action against disinformation, and fight for the right of every citizen to honest, independent journalism. An informed society is the strongest defense against manipulation. A free press is the strongest protection against authoritarianism. And together, we will make sure truth wins over lies and democracy stays strong for future generations. It's our responsibility, it's a high responsibility, and we have to do it together. Thank you very much.
Gracias. Thank you, Irache. And thank you, Hans and Sandro, for organizing. Do you hear me? No. For organizing this important event. Thank you to all participants, both here today and those who is joining us online. I could not agree more with Irache. We see a clear and a very worrying trend all across Europe, with a number of attacks being directed to the foundation of our democratic systems and to our core values as European Union. Press freedom is more than a principle, as Irache said a few minutes ago. It is a cornerstone of democracy. A free and independent press ensures that power is held to account, that public debates are informed by truth, and that no voice is silenced by authority and coercion. Without a free press, without journalists, without a strong and independent public sector media, misinformation thrives across social media. Manipulation is used to create chaos and mistrust. Power operates unchecked, and the voices and the vulnerable remain unheard. Access to information is also the lifeblood of a functioning democracy. It allows citizens to engage with public affairs, hold their leaders accountable, and participate mindfully in the democratic process. The right to information empowers communities and fosters trust between governments and the people they serve. As S&D Group, we stand firmly to press freedom, the protection of journalists, and the fight against disinformation. A well-informed society is the foundation of a strong democracy, and today, more than ever, it is crucial to ensure that we have free, independent, and well-supported media. This means supporting independent journalism, protecting journalists from harm, and challenging laws and practices that curtail these fundamental rights. The EU and its member states must uphold their commitments to press freedom, ensuring that all citizens can access reliable information without fear or favor. This is also the reason why it is so important to fully implement the Media Freedom Act, the DSA, and to uphold the mechanisms for protection of the rule of law in the EU. I think that we have many, many things to discuss during this afternoon, but regarding to our event, some information on the program ahead. Sandro Rotolo, a member of the Cult Committee and a former journalist, and our S&D Cult coordinator, Hans Hyde, will chair the two panels today. Sandro, an investigative journalist, is under protection because of his courage investigations into the mafia and the Camorra. He, along with 21 of his colleagues and 564 other people, is receiving protection, a clear example of these threats journalists face today. Thank you for your courage. Sandro will chair the first panel, The Imperative of Media Freedom in Europe, which will address a topic that should concern us all. We will hear from journalists and experts about the growing pressures they face and the urgent need to protect and strengthen independent reporting. Our S&D Cult coordinator, Hans Hyde, I never know to say your name, but I will try to speak Austrish, will share the second panel, Challenges for Youth in the Age of Online Disinformation and Foreign Interference. Hans has been a member of Cult Committee since 2019, so he well remembers all the negotiations surrounding the EMFA. Am I correct? He has also been heavily involved in work on misinformation, fake news, and more than that, Hans served as the S&D negotiator and spokesperson for the Committee of Inquiry investigating the use of the Pegasus and equivalent surveillance spyware. The second panel will focus on a vital issue, young people in the digital age, where we will focus our discussion around some key questions. How do we equip young people with the tools to navigate this landscape critically, not believe in everything they receive, but how to receive this and criticize what we receive? And how do we protect their right to the truth in an era of foreign interference? Dear colleagues, it is a pleasure for me As our president rightly said today, this event must be a call for action. Not only to speak about the problems, but to act about the problems and to have solutions for the problems. It's a call to protect journalists and ensure press freedom. It's a call to protect young people from digital manipulation. A call to ensure that democracy in Europe is not just defended, but strengthened for generations to come. And finally, a call to promote a safe public space for civil society and NGOs. Both play a crucial role to protect our democracies. In an age where misinformation spreads rapidly, and where young people are particularly exposed to malicious online content, to have informed and vigilant citizens is our best defense to protect both our democracies and the values we share. We stand for democracy. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we will do the change.
Thank you very much. Gracias.
Allora, buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, President Irache García Pérez and Vice President Ana Catarina Mendes for those inspiring introductions. But one point, Ana, journalists are born, not made, and you're a journalist for life. So don't say X, because even if someone gets involved in politics, once a journalist, always a journalist. I'm still an investigative journalist. 51 years on, I'm still the journalist I always was, right from 1964. And before I became an MEP, I spent most of my career as an investigative journalist. I was looking at organized crime networks, investigating them. I was also particularly specializing in the Camorra and received threats and intimidation until on the 4th of May 2015, 4th of May 2015, I was given police protection and armoured vehicle because the Camorra wanted to flame me alive because of my investigation into what they had been doing. And Sigfrido Ranucci, I'll be introducing to you in a moment, has also been engaged in such investigations. We are living in a time of peace in Europe, but people are dying. People are dying in Amsterdam, in Malta. People are getting killed. And we were in Malta, the location where Daphne Caruana Galizia had been killed in front of her house. And that was an emotional and moving moment, because we're not talking about the 19th century or early 20th century. We're talking about a time of peace, 2017, 80 kilometers from Italy, 1,000 kilometers from here. A journalist was killed, blown up in the cradle of civilization. This is unacceptable. We should always be outraged by that. We must always speak out. The threats aren't only coming from organised crime now. political power is also an obstacle to freedom of the media all too often. We've seen intolerance of media criticism in Italy. We've seen measures targeting independence of the judiciary, and we are now seeing Italy in the top 5 with Bulgaria, Croatia, Romania and Slovakia in terms of the countries of most concern in terms of rule of law. This is democratic backsliding. We're seeing this across Europe. There is censure of state media in Italy, an attempt at a power grab of the judiciary. All of this shows that a slow backsliding in terms of democratic principles at the heart of Europe is a real and present danger. What the government in Italy is doing now is taking a legislative package forward in the name of security. If approved as it stands, it would be the death knell of journalism. What it would mean is that journalists would have to collaborate with the secret services. They would have to provide confidential information. They'd have to reveal their sources, and they would have to hand over private property, which had from the course of their work and their investigations. Journalism would no longer be able to rely on protecting sources, because from one day to the next, the secret services could suddenly say, sorry, no, you have to reveal your sources. And Article 4 includes a reference to the need for journalists to reveal their sources or sensitive information. That is what is in that law. So we should be very alert very vigilant as to what may happen by August 2025. Because what we're seeing is an approach to legislation where, although we've presented questions to the Commission as MEPs, we've asked the Commission to look at whether these Italian measures are compatible with European law. Paragon Solutions, spyware used against journalists, and this severe infringement of privacy and the right to individual protection, with Elon Musk interfering in internal affairs in member states, attacking political leaders, and we've also seen that he's been interfering in Germany in the elections, and in terms of political plurality, the Digital Services Act has been interfering too. This is not an isolated case. This is part of a broader pattern. This is a slow but sure erosion of the democratic space. In Hungary, we've seen independent media virtually disappearing. In Bulgaria, Croatia, Slovakia, journalists face growing political pressure and intimidation. Just recently, a report by the Civil Liberties Union warned of unprecedented levels of interference in public service media in Italy. One example, the cancellation of writer Antonio Scurati's televised monologue marking Italy's Liberation Day. We're talking about Italy being liberated from Nazism and fascism. That's a speech that would have been dramatized for television. The whole plan was for this to be a TV performance, not for him to reading out part of his book, but it was banned by the public broadcaster, and the presenter was faced with disciplinary proceedings. So this is not just censorship, this is a wake-up call. And Sigfrido Ranucci, whom I'll be introducing to you probably in a moment, is one of those journalists who works for a public broadcaster, and is a one-off, I think, not only in Italy but around Europe. But I think here we need to move from talk to action. It's not enough just to be outraged. As a parliament, we need to do something, as Anna was saying too, and I'll come back to that. But I think when the media are silenced, we have to speak out. And Iratxe, I was pleased to hear your words there too, because there's a chilling effect. It's not just journalists. It's not just one profession. Public opinion itself is silenced. And if people are silent, so if we see this kind of manipulation like TikTok in Romania, we've got a clear example, because you lose that access to freedom of information. Whether this is democratic backsliding, or what do you want to call this, a cross between democracy and autocracy or dictatorship, this is something that we're seeing not only in Italy but elsewhere in Europe too. We're going to hear from several speakers. Ricardo Gutierrez, Secretary General of the European Federation of Journalists. We met in person in Malta, as I was telling you earlier, one of those anniversary events for Daphne Caruana Galizia's assassination. Shouldn't just say death, a mafia hit job, assassination. We were there for Daphne, we were there in person. Ricardo, over to you.
Merci, cher Sandro.
Thank you very much, Sandro. I remember what we said to each other in Malta in 2021. Paolo Borrometti was also there, and also had a police escort accompanying him. It was the 4th anniversary, or the commemoration of the 4th anniversary of the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia. I became Secretary General of the European Federation of Journalists, which is the main representative organization for journalists in Europe, some 10 years ago. And in 10 years, in the member states of the European Union, 14 journalists have been killed. In Greece, in the Netherlands, in the United Kingdom, which was still a member of the EU at the time, in Malta, in Denmark, in Slovakia, Jan Kuciak, and in France, in the Charlie Hebdo attacks. I would never have thought 10 years ago that I would be commenting on the number of journalists murdered in on the soil or in the of member states of the European Union. And Iratxe García Pérez was quite right when she gave her introduction. It's not just about defending the press, it's about defending democracy, the rule of law. And Sandro, I think, also mentioned the governments, the efforts made by governments at the moment to try and undermine that rule of law in Europe. That's our very democracy. This is a serious issue. For the first time in modern history, we are seeing on the other side of the Atlantic a collusion between public and military powers. The president of the country, which is the most powerful in the world in terms of its military and its economy, and the leaders of big tech. That's the information industry, the new information industry. The day after the elections, Elon Musk tweeted to ex-users, "We are the media now." And to make things even clearer, the next day he clarified that the traditional media was now a thing of the past. This is a very clear agenda. It's about destroying the media and journalists and journalism itself. The signals from the big tech industry about European regulation are quite clear. We'll we're lucky to be living in a democratic political context here, where, as far as we can, we try to regulate these major information platforms. This is the case with the DSA, Digital Services Act, and other pieces of legislation. And what the platforms are saying is that they want to get rid of that regulation. When Meta says that they are doing away with fact-checking in the United States, when X does not respect the regulatory constraints placed on it in the European Union, when Google says that it wants to put an end to moderation of Google search and YouTube, these are all very clear signals for us. This new political and military alliance in the world, in collusion with technology, wants to see the end of European regulation and, I would say more, the end of the European Union itself as a democratic coordinated power. So this is a very serious time for us, and I quite honestly feel that there is a genuine need for all Democrats in Europe to defend the freedom of the press. Once again, we're not talking about defending the privileges of journalists, but defending the rights of European Union citizens to have access to free, independent, plural information. That's one of our riches in Europe. In the United States, they're destroying the decisions taken in the country on the 20th of January, for example, with the cancelling of international cooperation. They're destroying the Ukrainian media and the Belarusian media in exile. The United States is destroying the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, which are examples of media which maintained examples of pluralism in the face of dictatorships in Azerbaijan or in Belarusia. The agenda is clear once again. I think that there is a huge responsibility before the legislators in the European Union, and we're counting on our allies in the European Parliament and in the Commission. We need to stop political interference in the media in Europe, and we need to stop the abusive use of spyware. We've seen highly suspect situations in Italy, in Slovakia, in Greece. We need to stop the laws which stop journalists from doing the work properly. We need to get rid of abusive judicial procedures such as SLAPPs, which are intended to silence journalists. We need to make sure that the media are have a financially stable basis. And I'm not blaming the European Union. I welcome the initiatives already taken in the European Union. For example, the recommendation from 2021 on protecting journalists. There's the European Media Freedom Act, which Sandro mentioned, and that is an essential tool for safeguarding our media. The Anti-SLAPP Directive, which is a bit limited in scope, but there is a recommendation that asks member states to go further than the provisions of the directive. So I think it now falls to all Democrats in Europe to make sure that, given the world context, which is particularly hostile and which threatens our democracies, not just the freedom of the press, there we need an alliance of Democrats, of civil society, and of elected representatives and our governments who are still interested. We need that alliance now to rise to these challenges. In my role, I am witnessing a situation which I could not have imagined 10 years ago, but I continue to be optimistic because I believe in the will of those who want to do something about this. Thank you.
Grazie, Riccardo.
Well, thank you, Riccardo. Two pieces of good news. The first is that there are about 100 of us here today, and the second is that there are about 100 more online. So that's something I think which is positive. So thanks to those who are there. And when we've heard from the speakers. I'll open the floor and you will have an opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to move on to Sigfrido Ranucci now. And by way of introduction, I would say that we grew up with American journalism, Watergate, the McNamara Report, and so on, as examples. And we understood journalists as the watchdogs of our society. At the moment, things seem to be in crisis. Public power wants to control our information. And you, Sigfrido, I think are a point at the forefront for us. If you win, we all win. Power is doing everything it can to silence you. You are under threat. You also have bodyguards or an escort, and we have also you've also had to deal with the issue of slaps and a government which is calling for your resignation regularly or dismissal. Sometimes I feel that things are the wrong way round. It's supposed to be journalists who criticise public power and call it to account, but now it's the other way around. Who is responsible, though, in institutional terms? There are many members of the European Parliament here, and it's wonderful to see you here, but in fact, should be happening, as I've seen when I was a journalist, is that we should be putting forward our ideas and criticising. But now it's you, people like you, Sigfrido, who are being attacked. For example, Maurizio Gasparri, who regularly attacks you, Sigfrido. And the point is that when we criticise them, they immediately go running to the courts and protecting themselves, and then they're allowed to attack us as much as they want. They want to have Sigfrido dismissed. Now, who's going to decide what's going to happen to Sigfrido? In fact, in the end, it's us. It's the public which will decide if a programme is seen, if people watch it or not. It can't be the political establishment that does so. We have a government which has appointed those who run the RAI, and that's an important symbol, and I think it's worth remembering that. Sigfrido, go ahead, please.
Buonasera.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving me your time today, and thank you to the S&D group for bringing up this issue. I think it's fundamental at the moment, this whole issue of freedom of information. Here I represent a team which for some 30 years has been working in investigative journalism, and we have done our work independently from the world of politics. And the most important thing about this all is that it's the public who watch it and the public who pay for it at the end of the day. So thank you very much for inviting me here and for mentioning the RAI. As you know, Sandro, there is a whole issue to do with the RAI and the way that funding is managed for that. And I think it's important to remember that over the years that we've been providing investigative journalism, we've done so with a spirit of public service. That said, a few days ago, round about the time of the anniversary of the death of Ilaria Volgi, the report called Oxygen for Information, that's the first slide, showed that once again, so next slide please, that Italy is one of the countries with most journalists at risk. 516 at threat, 270 protected, 24 with escorts. And since 2006, 7,555 have been menaced or threatened, rather, 22 through unfounded legal procedures or baseless legal procedures brought by public administration and by politicians. And you mentioned the importance of defending free journalism. I would say as well that of those journalists who are not supported by a large company such as RAI, for example, or who in their countries work independently or work for local bodies, they do a fundamental role, and they're not being paid much more than 10 euros an hour. And they are often subject to these kinds of lawsuits from politicians, from the authorities, or from criminals as well. I think in my 30 years, what I've seen is that our country is sick at heart, and but it's so used to it that it sees its problems as normal. And for local journalists, local journalists are our antibodies. They need to be strengthened before the sickness gets worse and kills us off altogether. In the next slide, I wanted to show you something to do with the program that I do called Report. A few days ago, there was once again another lawsuit lodged against us, and this is a list of all of those lodged by the Italian government over the years to try and put a stop to the program that I make. And it's not just about politicians as well. It's not just about politicians. We've had on a world record. We've had Giorgio Motoro recently said during an inquiry that over the recent years, most of the politicians arrested for mafia activities belonged to Fratelli d'Italia. Then we were reported legal action was taken, and the basis for that was that external consulting company, which was asked to provide the data for that, and I find this to be absurd. And we were only thinking about those that had been arrested, not those that were put under investigation. And in the end, they said it was just 20% of the party. Now, 20% was quite a lot, but they seem to be happy with that. Then in recent years, there was the lawsuit lodged by Ignazio La Russa, the Speaker of the Senate. And one of the issues here is that it was to do with how the judges are selected as well. We've also had lawsuits from others, though, from La Russa's children, from the Berlusconi family as well. And Giancarlo Giorgetti, as a Minister for Economy and Finances, his wife, sister. And then Attilio Fontana, who's a president of the Lombardy region, his daughter, Marta Fascina, Adolfo Urso. I just want to say something about Adolfo Urso. He's the Minister for Made in Italy for Economic Development. He signs the services contract with the RAI, and paradoxically, in the service contract, which allows us to be paid, he wants to promote investigative journalism. That's in the contract. And then after that, well, he goes and lodges lawsuits against us. And then there's Maurizio Gasparri, who is leader of the group in the Senate of Forza Italia, but also is a member of the oversight body for the RAI. If you look at the next slide, you'll see him. And he has been using his position to try and cause problems for us. He appeared in the Senate with a little bottle of alcohol and a carrot. The reason is he wants to undermine our credibility, and the reason for that is that we're carrying out an investigation into him. It turned out that he was was president of a lobbying company in cybersecurity, and some of the those running the company, the owners of it, belong to the Mossad. And he had forgot to mention this when he made his declaration about conflicts of interest. Now, he lodged a question with the Ministry of Justice to know how many lawsuits we had against us altogether, because up to that point we had always been cleared. So I've faced 197 lawsuits and requests for compensation, and to date, thanks to the cooperation of the legal office in the RAI and their support, things have always gone well. When he asked the Ministry of Justice an official question to know why we had always been cleared. On the next slide, you'll see what happened after a change in the RAI administration. For the first time, after being attacked a number of times, could just be a coincidence, may not be though. What happened was that after pressure, political pressure, through the oversight body, through Gasparri, through Minister Urso, and through La Russa, the repeats of report were taken off the programming schedule. We've been broadcast for years. And of course, this is a source of finances for the RAI as well, because there's advertising to be, revenues to be gained. And there was a battle waged by the Partito Democratico and the Five Star Movement, and 5 of these reruns or repeats were put back on the programming. Next slide, please. Well, you can see the reactions from some of the trade union organisations in the national press. People have highlighted the importance of report and the issue of the reruns. And Davide Di Pietro, who's one of the members of the administrative board of the RAI, also brought it up. If you look at the next slide, you'll see what happened there, what an anonymous source said in La Presse. He said that the issues to do with what's going to happen to these broadcasts of report were always going to be agreed with through the company, through RAI. Perhaps that was supposed to be a reassuring message for the political world, and to show that they weren't actually going to have people keeping too close an eye on them. After all of these controversies, the time of broadcast was changed for our programme, for a report, which of course penalised it. And this really runs counter to the services contract, which is supposed to be promoting the importance of investigative journalism. And then on the 27th of October, we broadcast an episode on the elections in Liguria, and that led to a huge fuss. Once again, probably because of Maurizio Gaspari, who accused us of breaking the rules on equal treatment of political parties. And then on the next slide, you'll see where we broadcast another episode on the genocides in Palestine, and immediately afterwards we received death threats. People saying that what's happened to Charlie Hebdo and the journalists there should happen to us as well. And then on the 8th of December, we reported. Broadcast an inquiry on the Boccia San Giuliano affair involving one of the ministers of the government. And once again, Gaspari was climbing the walls. And this also led to a whole series of mudslinging against the report, which seems to be organised, where we were accused of having links with some kind of spying organisation. Next slide, please. And these, next slide, please. And these are false or groundless accusations. And we're saying that there was use of wiretappings and so on. And this distorted use of the media by has been carried out by a publication called Il Giornale, which is owned by a member of the Parliament. When it came to further episodes of our programme, we received again more pressure, and calls were made to have the programme taken off the air altogether after a programme that we broadcast about the mafia. And once again, they're similar to what happened with the genocide in Palestine. Next slide, please. You can see people calling for a report to be placed under the kind of control of a body to monitor what it's doing. And then on the 12th of January, after further broadcast of ours, we saw the emergence again of this attempt to try and limit the independence of a programme which we've been working on for over 30 years and which has always done its job.
In Italia,
Thank you. For those who don't live in Italy, perhaps wouldn't know necessarily about this, but it is incredibly interesting. Here we're talking about an investigative programme, and everything now is being laid at Sigfrido's door, despite the fact what he's doing is talking about the facts, investigating the facts. And now we have Thibault Brutin, who is Director General of Reporters Without Borders. Reporters Without Borders is an organisation I've been following for years. It's an independent body. And it's particularly famous because every year it publishes a kind of health check for press freedom in the world. I know Italy is 46th at the moment on that list. Same level as certain South American and African countries. So clearly a ring an alarm bell there. Mr. Brutin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important that
we have the opportunity to rally around the cause of press freedom. Too often we believe that a free press is taken as a given, and if you look back, its invention is actually fairly recent, and there is no reason to believe that it's actually something that is necessarily tied to democracy. Indeed, we see lots of attacks on a free press in countries where populist leaders are trying to use the elections as a platform to attack rule of law. In our perspective as an organization, we do believe that indeed democracy is about elections, but it's also about the rule of law, and it's also about the ability to have a public conversation that is based on facts. Because if you have elections which are based on rumors, on actually attacks and assaults which are preposterous, I think it doesn't really make sense to go and vote. So I think it's a good idea to gather together. I'd like to congratulate the group for this idea, and also the personal commitment of the various members of parliament. And I think we have this saying in French that journalism leads to everything. Sometimes it leads to politics, and it's for the best sometimes in order to have politicians that are able to endorse the cause of a free press. I think it's important to say that we need the European voice now to be heard better. We are facing a campaign which is a total importation of something that has nothing to do with the historic tradition of France and of Europe. I think it's the question of the free speech. There is no reason why nobody is standing against this campaign in order to favor an absolute view of free speech that goes against journalism. Journalism and a free press are tied to a free speech. We don't know any society where journalists are free and the speech is not free. And the same goes for societies in terms of a free speech. What is the point of having free speech if you can't have a free press to expose the facts on which the public conversation should be based? So I think it's important to stand for that and to be very clear about it, not to be shy. Nobody has anything against freedom of expression, but this free speech is total nonsense in the way it's being spread across Europe. So I think we need to have leaders within the European Union that are vocal about it and that stand for it. I'd like to say one final point as an introduction is to say that we need, obviously, journalists to be safe and sound, but we need journalism to be something that is an activity that is profitable, lively, that is diverse, that is pluralistic. And I think we should not consider the freedom of the press as something that is limited to safety. It's more than safety. It's about the political context, it's about society responding to journalism, and it's also about the economy. So I'd like to point three things that you guys can do. The first thing is that obviously this is an important moment for the European Union in terms of its relationship with the framework that allow the press to thrive. The past legislature has brought lots of new texts, which are good texts in our perspective, which are texts that should be totally enforced. RSF, among other organizations, including the European Federation of Journalists, has issued a letter to the Commission in order to make sure that there is strong enforcement of DSA in light of the declarations of some of the tech platforms. We think DSA should be really, really actioned. There are ways, there are moments, where we need to see the actual, legislation making a difference. The same goes for the Media Freedom Act, which will come into effect in August, and we think it's really important to make sure that the legislations comply with the actual text within the EU. We will be especially vigilant on three topics, the topics which has been touched upon with the example of RAI, which is the independence, governance, and funding of public service media. We think the text within the EU is super clear about it, and not all national legislation are compliant with that. The second thing is the thresholds for, fighting against the concentration of media within the hands of a few billionaires. Practices like ones we have seen in Central Europe of shopping, I would say, within the media market, of taking over media and transforming them, are things that the Media Freedom Act are trying to address, and we need to see national legislation to do so. And the third point, which we will be also very much looking into, is the question of the independence of newsroom, of the guarantees for independence for journalists within the national framework. So all of that are things we need to consolidate now. And we think the European Parliament has a big role to play in pushing the Commission in making full application of this text. Also, we need to use this text in order to make a difference within the countries which are at risk. And my neighbor has mentioned Bulgaria, Slovakia, and other countries which are, in our perspective, posing a question in terms of their application and the ability to have a free press. So the filing we made for the rule of law report is, really a call for action. We can't consider that, there are no problem of a free press within Europe, and we need to concentrate our political and our funding efforts in that regard. Second point is that there has been this idea, which I guess will come into fruition in 2025, of a democratic shield. The idea might sound like, a superhero, poster, but I think the idea behind it is very interesting. We should make that shield something strong, and we should use it in order to make sure that we change doctrine in order to protect our information space. How come repressive regimes are so good at closing their space, and our information space, which is by law already a European space, is so open to propaganda, is so open to all forms of content which have nothing to do with journalism? So we need to have a protection reciprocity mechanism in order to open up our space based on how much other people open up. We need also to be strong with the tech platforms. We need to have a must-carry provision for journalism content. Tomorrow, and already today actually, some of the tech companies are saying that journalism brings no value to the users of tech platforms. And we need to make sure that they continue onboarding that. And more than that, we need to make sure there is due prominence, appropriate moderation, and monetization for this content. This is a fight that should happen now, because we're facing now the counter-reform based on the steps forward taken by the previous EU institutions. So I think it's important to do that. And third point, which I think is a good segue to the conclusion, is the idea that we need to build the trust in media. We need to support journalism in its best expressions. Even some of the EU member states are tempted to fight the black magic of propaganda with another sort of black magic, which is strategic communications. We don't need that within the EU. We need a strong journalism. We need a journalism worthy of that name, with ethics, with means, with methods. And all of that is something we can achieve. So we need to have a public policy within the EU that addresses the questions of trust in media, which strengthen the media, including the media in exile. And we collectively have been supporting the Russian and Belarusian media in exile, but we need to do better and we need to do more. And I will conclude with one point, is the fact that there is today a crisis and an opportunity, which is the defunding of Radio Free Europe. The President, CEO of Radio Free Europe, has been in Brussels for a few days, and we have facilitated some of his meetings. We think it's really important that the EU steps in and takes responsibility for the funding of this public service media that is enabling the distribution of content, and independent content, to hundreds of millions within the larger European continent. This is an opportunity that will not come up again. If Radio Free Europe is broken, that will be one of the best gifts to Vladimir Putin and his cronies. It's going to be one of the moments where the EU, I think, needs to stand in and make sure that funding follows, that we maintain the light within Radio Free Europe. If we don't, I think it will be a pity, because it would have been one of the opportunities we have to stand for a free press within Europe and also in the neighboring countries of Europe. Thank you very much.
Grazie Thibault. E ora la parola.
Thank you very much, Thibault. And now I'll pass the floor to Otmar Lachodinsky. Hope I managed to pronounce that correctly. We've got even more people following us online now. We're up to around 200, which is wonderful. Please, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, dear friends and colleagues, thanks for having invited me here. I'm the president of the association, the honorary president of the Association of European Journalists. We are present in, I think now, 15 European countries, not just EU countries. We also have a section in Turkey and also on the Balkans, in Albania, for instance. And we had one in Ukraine. And I would like to say some words to my speaker from radio, from Reporter Without Borders. I think that is a really good chance now, and this would be a perfect opportunity to step in, as you said, because I even witnessed the influence of free media from the West. At that time, it was the Americans paid Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, acting from Munich and later on from Prague. And they have really a wide audience spreading to Azerbaijan and other countries. I think if this is silenced by the Americans, I think it is an opportunity we have to step in. I mean the Europeans. And I remember the European Commission, the last one, had a plan to form a kind of European Radio Free Europe, to inform the people in the new member countries, especially because they knew already that the people from the Baltic countries till Bulgaria, they are especially vulnerable to disinformation coming from mainly from Russia, but also a bit from China. And Mrs. Jourova, with whom we had a very good contact, AJ, she actually also said we should form a kind of a new Radio Free Europe, but now financed from the European Union. But that was a long time before Trump became president. And I also wanted to tell a little bit of my feelings when I read now that American journalists come under attack by the people from Trump's administration. You know, the American media were a kind of model for us, for my generation of journalists, when they were really having the torch of freedom of speech and free media, especially when I covered the former communist Middle and Central and Eastern Europe. We had a very difficult, but also very important role to play, and so I would say it's really somehow strange to me that suddenly, when you watch our homepage, that we have now recently put up a resolution in order to support our American colleagues, also from, you know, when the agency Associated Press was barred from attending White House briefings because they were resenting they didn't allow to speak about the Gulf of Mexico, and they were barred from attending press conferences in the White House. And this is really strange because for us now we have to defend our American colleagues from attacks from Trump administration. Especially you have seen it in the media. Mr. Goldberg, you know, from Atlantic magazine, he was attacked now by the Vice President of the United States and the Minister of Defense and the highest security advisor of Trump. Why? Because he was attending the secret signal meeting when the U.S. Highest U.S. politicians talked about attacks on the Houthi rebels, and somebody invited by mistake this editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine. And now, I mean, he did what a journalist has to do. He reported about his meeting, and now he is attacked really in the worst manner, that he is not a journalist, and so I think AJ and also Reporter Without Borders, we have to defend him against these attacks. Maybe they will try to close down the Atlantic magazine. That this could be. So we are at that point when United States media are under attack, and United States administration is no longer a model for freedom of press. And let me tell also once, because we are till now we were especially under attack by Russian disinformation, and now I really. There is still a difference, you know. You have free media still free media in the United States, and no free media in Russia. Yes, that's a big difference. But in a way, they are approaching, especially the politicians from both sides, they are approaching themselves, and these authoritarian wise men, as they are called, they try to rule the world, and they try to form free media according to their models. So I think here Europe has a big role to play. We have to go on with our regulations, as we talked with the Media Freedom Act, and especially also the Digital Services Act. We have to control these platforms, because otherwise they are already controlling us, but we could still do something against them when we have our own European rules. And I hope that the new Commission will be strong enough to fight against this danger that these media platforms can act against the European freedom of speech. So really, let me come to a conclusion, but maybe just one word, if it's possible, about also my own country, because we heard from Italy, and in Austria it was really dangerous as well, because we almost got a far-right party in our government. This was avoided more or less in the last minute, and this party, FPÖ, the Freedom Party, they had all the plans already in when they would become the main party in the government. They would have put control on the public media, on the public radio and television in Austria. And the party boss, Mr. Kickl, he said his model for politics and also media is Hungary. And you know what happened in Hungary? There is no more press freedom in Hungary. And so this was a model by a politician from Austria who wanted to become the Chancellor of Austria. I'm really happy that this was avoided. We have now another government without the strongest party. And again, here the Americans they do the same thing what the Russians did. They try to interfere in our elections. Yeah, when Mr. Musk is saying that biggest and the only party in Germany is the right-wing AfD, who should be become to power. He does the same thing what the Russians did so far in trying to influence Brexit, in trying to have influence on the elections in France, etc., etc. So we have to be really vigilant, and I hope that the new European Commission and the Parliament will have the guts to really to be strong, and to be strong now against menaces from both sides, yeah, from Russia and from the United States. And Europe has a role to play. Thank you very much.
Grazie, Otmar.
Thank you, Otmar. Thank you. Now, before I pass the floor over to Hannes for the second panel, we've got a couple of questions. I'd like to start with Marco Tarquinio, who is a Democratic Party member here. And then we can have another question. We probably only have time for two, though. We're running out of time. I'll keep it quick. I very much appreciate what we've heard this morning. Now, this is the kind of thing we've been talking about for years. We've got fewer and fewer people in charge of more and more of our media. So my question is very short, is about direct control on journalists. We know that Sandro's seen quite a lot of this in his life. Francesco Cancellato, we're seeing in Italy what's happening there with Paragon Software. And I don't think we're the only ones in Europe or in the world or even in the Mediterranean. But my question to you, Mr. Ranucci, would be, have you ever had any reason to doubt the fact that you or someone in your team is subject to some kind of external control from politicians or elsewhere, that this kind of control is being done through kind of subterfuge, if you like? Thank you. Well, suspicions always. On various occasions, though, I have been certain of it as well. Because in my team, we had 3 people following me, filming me. On another occasion, I was certain that Fazzolari, who was Vice President of the Council at the time, was also collating information on my activity and what I was doing.
Credo.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I think this is something we're seeing in Italy. And I think we need to have an investigation into this, as all opposition parties in Italy need to. Obviously, this is a critical time. And as Sigfrido has said, the situation is incredibly serious in Italy at the moment. Serious because we're seeing what's happening with Meta, we're seeing what's happening in the Mediterranean with Paragon. And I can tell you that at this moment, Sigfrido is receiving protection. We know what investigative journalism is. We don't want to end up with what we've pretty much now even just got Sigfrido left, and we can't lose him. I think, yes, we're talking about opposition parties, but the majority as well.
Domanda.
Yes, okay. Another question, perhaps from the younger members of our audience?
Non I politici, insomma, chi...
Not necessarily the members, anybody who'd like to ask a question. Please, go ahead.
Presentati e dici
If you could introduce yourself first, please.
Tutti, grazie per gli
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for your comments. My question goes to all of you, but probably a little more to Mr. Ranucci, who obviously deals with Italy. Those who have launched complaints against Mr. Ranucci, we know, of course, we've got the draft law coming. You'll remember the LGBTQ issue before. But everything that we've heard today, I think there's something which is incredibly important, and that this is the kind of policy of hate. We've got a lot of anger. People have to find an enemy, have to focus on someone. And so my question is as follows. This political culture obviously has a certain colour. It's coming from the extreme right. And journalism, and politics, but journalism primarily, can it still speak the truth? Can it still carry out investigations like you're doing? Can it really expose the truth? And explain that actually, in reality, democracy is not perhaps what we're living in? Just a quick response, if you would. Thank you. Well, I have always considered RAI, a public service, to be an ideal place for us to carry out investigations. I've always felt free. There have been times where I've had to work harder for my freedom. But if in RAI now we're seeing this as well, then, and we've had attacks in the past, we know what's happened with Renzi, but there is one point that is worth mentioning, I think. The problem I've got, and it's not just my problem, it's broader than that, it comes from a whole series of real cross-cutting laws, in addition to the gag law. In previous months, we've seen journalists being put in prison. And the major contribution made internationally by investigative journalists have gone into a database. The information is there. In Italy, people are risking going to prison for something that they'd be able to say and be able to do in other countries. Publishing the names of people in pre-custody situations, not being able to say who these people are anymore. This is the kind of situation we're facing, where we're not allowed to speak out. This person's name, if they are still presumed to be innocent, that name is not to be published. If we've got somebody who has been arrested, somebody from the public sphere, we're not allowed to know their name, we're not allowed to publish their name. And now we've got the Cartabia law, which is looking at immunity. And that means that from the 1st of January in Italy, things are going to change in regards to the access we've got to these kinds of cases. We've had this go through if it goes through the Court of Appeal, it can be years before we find out the information about these people. Then there is a law which can also mean that their name can be rendered anonymous once again. It may mean that we would never know the name of somebody who has been judged guilty for something. Nonetheless, that name would not be able to be made public. Perhaps there's something I can finish with. from a US poet who talked about one particular person talking about library and saying that knowledge is the only instrument we have to distinguish false from true, wrong from right. And so I think it's incredibly important that everybody is informed, and I would like to ask everybody in Europe for us to ensure that we do protect media freedom and freedom of expression, because it is so important.
Ovviamente.
Thank you. It's not over. We're going to continue the conversation. We're getting more and more people following us online. We're at 250 now. So I'll give the floor and then we'll conclude this session, and I'll hand over to the other panel.
So one panelist is still missing, but I think it's hard to get up here to the podium. So, liebe Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmer.
So, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in the room, but also all of you who are joining us on the live stream, welcome to our second round. Now we're going to be talking about the future of Europe, particularly young people. And young people are particularly convinced of the importance of European unity, and so therefore it's important for us to also focus on them. The European Union is facing an existential threat at the moment. We've got more and more extreme radical forces from the right trying to destroy the European Union. They've made it their goal. But they've also got the media in their sights. And the EU is being attacked, but the media and journalists are also being attacked. They always speak about wanting to destroy a system. And part of this system is independent journalism. It's media freedom. And the monitoring and surveillance that we do here, calling power to account. And we're seeing that the media is changing, that the number of people who are informing themselves about what happens in the world is falling in terms of those who are turning to traditional media, be it newspaper, television. These are the kinds of media that no longer hold such great importance for many people. And a lot of people, large number of people, many of our citizens, many of our electorate, are getting their news from social media, particularly the young. Very often, they get their information, they get their news in a kind of quick blast from the socials. And young people also often are unaware that social media, that these platforms are first and foremost businesses. They are a business model. They're not out there to try and provide particularly good information. They want to raise money, they want clicks. There are huge contracts at play here for people's attention. This is the situation that we've seen in Austria as well. We've seen more money being spent on meta media than we have on traditional media by certain outlets. And algorithms also play an important role here. If you turn to X today, then the algorithm is going to hide certain things from you, and it's going to push certain things towards you. And I often see posts from people that previously would have been deemed to be neo-Nazis. That's what that information would have been labelled as before, and now that information seems to be in the mainstream. I also see posts denying the Holocaust. And I also see posts talking about the situation in Palestine, saying that it isn't a genocide. This is the kind of content that is out there, that is being spread. And TikTok, another social media platform, which I can't use because it's currently telling me that I'm not a person and so I'm not able to use it. But we've also seen there too that there has been a lot of situations where some candidates are not able to get on TikTok and others have a huge presence on it. That isn't equality either, and that also skews the content. When it comes to AI and deep fakes, we're seeing those increasingly, and this is another challenge that we need to work out how to cope with, and that is the kind of thing that our panel today is going to be talking about. So I would like now to welcome to the podium 3 guests that we've got with us today. Firstly, I'd like to introduce you to Jakob Slidz, off to my left, who is the founder and president of the Pravda Association in Poland. I'd like to thank you very much for being here. Then we've got Monsieur Kukotilainen, from a professor at University of Tampere in Finland. Thank you very much for coming. And then we've got Lelio Savonardo, who is a professor in the Department for Social Sciences at the University of Naples. Welcome. I'd like to also ask you you've got this sheet with these people's CVs, and you can get a little bit more background information about them there and teach you a little bit more about the people that we've got up here today. So now, bearing in mind what I've just described to you, I think we have to ask ourselves the question of the importance of the use of media, how we have to teach people how to use media, how we should teach media at schools. I myself am a member of the Culture and Education Committee, and the issue of how we teach young people in Europe is incredibly important. Often we get the feeling that young people are great at using digital technology, they know how to use it. But according to a study, over 70% of young people in Europe believe that they don't have adequate digital skills and that they do not have enough education in how to deal with social media. So I'd like to get started then, and Jakub Sitz can go first, please.
Dziękuję bardzo za zaproszenie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great honor. I am a fact checker. We verify facts, verify information. We are a group of young journalists, but also doctors and other young professionals. We often use our free time to fact check and to verify information. We've been talking here about an array of different challenges. We were talking about a different pattern of media consumption, if you could call it that way. What is most important for me is to, put certain order into the tendencies of fact consumption or media consumption among the young. I could quote some of the research in this matter, because what is most important here to realize what a huge change has come in one generation. My generation has been educated by internet memes, funny pictures, and now we use social media. We use social media that is pumping billions and billions of bytes of information into our daily lives all the time. And of course, among this information, there is a lot of false information, fake news. We are not talking only about the wave of fake news. We are being bombarded by news, among which part, of course, is false. So we have no time. We have no time to verify facts because we are being bombarded by facts and information all the time, coming from all sources, and we have to navigate it somehow. We have to find our way. So what is most important is media literacy. So we are present in schools, we have different educational programs, we talk to students, pupils, but there are many challenges, and I hope we can talk about this. There is a different information paradigm. In this day and age, we consume information via ChatGPT, via artificial intelligence. This is, of course, a new challenge. I can see, even when having coffee, how, my peers are using ChatGPT all the time, other AI tools. This is another group of problems. In Poland, we've had a research on the lowering age of access to internet. So the situation is different than we thought. In the group from 7 to 14 years of age, 70% uses internet. They have smartphones and other gadgets. So I don't know whether the situation is worse than we expected or thought, but it's certainly different than we expected. And of course, they are also being exposed to harmful content. 10 most visited domains or pages in the bracket 7 to 14 years of age. We have Pornhub and other porn sites, other adult sites. So the type of exposure is changing. How we consume media is changing. The young people consume information coming from the so-called influencers, so they don't read information or are not even so much present on social media. So Instagram, TikTok, this is their main source. Thank you.
Ja, herzlichen Dank für
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. You're quite right that the content that we see today and that you've talked about obviously do garner a lot of interest. Speaking of interest, I can tell you that the number of people listening to our stream is increasing. We're at 260 now, so climbing upwards. It shows that we are talking about a topic that is incredibly interesting to people and that we're getting a lot of attention. So thank you very much. Now, I can pass the floor further down to Ms. Sirko Kotilainen. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This whole seminar has a very, very important topic. And it was, for me, an honor to be invited and hear about the media sector as well, because for 15 years now, I have been a media education researcher focused partially in educational side and partially in media side, so linking them together. And the topic of myself and the interest of myself today as a researcher as well has been for a few years already, this disinformation and AI-based communication, artificial intelligence recently, generative AI and AI-based communication. So you can change we can see there. So these are the recent European research projects which currently are going on. The EU Kids Online, I'm responsible in Finland of conducting that research, and the statistical questionnaires are closing at the end of this month. We can have the comparative European knowledge until September. From almost all European countries, they are participating into this research. And for example, in that research, a lot of questions are including this AI and AI-based communication. We are asking even in that questionnaire from 10 years until 16 years olds about deep fakes and if they are sharing those through generative AI somehow. So, and the other one is EU CREA project in which we are developing educational tools online, open access, and educational models for combating these problems among youngsters at school and in out-of-school activities in youth counseling. So please change the slide. So if we think about this disinformation, not only fake news, it is more, how to say, broad concept among young people if we talk about underaged. So they are even spreading disinformation about themselves, like even, and linking that not only in social media, but linking that with physical activities, even with violence, like physical violence and shooting videos and then publishing. You have probably seen those as well. And we are talking about younger and younger, even 10, 11 years olds. And the focus in malinformation among young is the topic as well. There is intent to harm each other based on ethnic backgrounds, even gender. Please change the slide. So that in Y-Skills project, we conducted comparative qualitative testing research among youth 14 years olds in Finland, Belgium, Czech Republic, so in these 3 countries. And in all of those countries, youngsters, it was year 21, 22, they understood quite well that tracking and recommendations as algorithm-based information, but they didn't understand platform economics, which means, for example, economical posted information. And the other fact was disinformation. They understood perhaps, and some of them understood that, okay, this is fake news or this is disinformation, but anyway, I want to share it. So that was one point that waked up us to think about the activities, which are partially like everyday activities for young people. Please change the slide. So key challenges which we have defined are regarding the future, even present, are the broadening inequalities in digital literacies inside nations and around Europe, and including critical awareness of AI-based communication. And that may lead interference in communication online, but that may lead as well to breaking of democracies in future. Who are those? If we don't teach digital literacy, if we don't develop policies on digital literacies to schools, to youth work, even to media, to develop some kind of programs or whatever about digital literacies and critical awareness of AI. So that may lead to the situation that we don't have journalism anymore. Who are those who can talk about freedom of journalism, freedom of media after 10, 20 years? So, and it is about decreasing the trust in reliable sources, leading to conspiracy theories. So, as in the previous panel, there were at least several highlights and pointings to the fact that it is time to Europe now. So in this media literacy, digital literacy, it is time to Europe now to develop really the policies. Okay, please change. And I'm not going to go deep in this one, but in the field of media education, in research, we already are developing models. What does it mean to develop not only media literacy, which has history, already 60 years in Europe, at least in Finland, but I mean that to update that media literacy to digital age and talk about AI literacy, literacy of artificial intelligence, which is linked with disinformation. Please. So what is needed is policies of AI literacy education in Europe and in national policies as well. And the policy should be demanding educators and educational policies as well. So thank you.
Ein herzliches Dankeschön auch.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that really alarming information, looking at it in so much detail. I think it's also interesting to look at those kind of key challenges as well. I think you made it very clearly here that we're not just talking about a collapse of the EU, but a collapse of our democratic society itself, and that this is a real call for us to act. Thank you very much. So now the third person on our panel is Lelio Savonardo. Please, I'd like to ask you to take the floor, sir.
Sì, eccomi. Preferisco
I prefer to speak standing up. If that's not a problem for anyone, I hope you can still hear me. Okay, no, I'll sit down then. I generally prefer to stand up when I speak. Thank you very much for that invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. I think this issue is absolutely vital to young people. I'll be taking a rather different starting point to the others, but I'll probably end up at the same place in terms of conclusions. We are living in a software culture, a software society. IT language surrounds us. Young people, Generation Z, the bit generation, with bit in the sense of IT, the way communication happens, the way creativity happens, it's all online. And the information is coming in from the infosphere. The infosphere is a new public sphere. It's not the Habermas public sphere, it's changed. We participate in a different way. The way in which we participate in public life is different. There are a lot of interconnected publics. We work through networks, through mass networks, digital networks, interpersonal relationships, and relationships which social media and the internet feed into, and young people are increasingly immersed in that. They live it, and we can't rid ourselves of that anymore. We are now in a digital society. AI is a predominant language, although artificial intelligence is a misnomer. And you can't stop it. You can't stand in the way of technological progress. You can't hold it back. That's what humans do. We are minds, but we are the collective accumulation of the technology which we have used. That is useful to our development. That is the way we work. The question is, who takes the decisions? Who decides what content goes in to these networks? Disinformation, for instance. But the instrument itself is extraordinary. It's fantastic. The issue is, how do you use it and who is in charge? Which direction do you go in? And how do you guide people? How do you help people along the way, especially young people? And now, possibly fortunately, for the first time in the history of humanity, young people are teaching older people. For the first time ever, it's the children teaching the adults. It's the children teaching the parents, the grandparents. They're showing them how to use IT. They're digital natives. They're Generation Z. They live and breathe online communication. That's what they do. They do things digitally. They're sponges, they just absorb. That's what young people do. They just absorb everything from their environment. So they pick up those skills. They learn those skills extremely quickly. They're tech savvy from the cradle. And they teach their grandparents, they teach their parents how to use technologies that are a bit of a mystery to older people. But whether we're talking about digital skills in the sense of the more technical ones or more analytical ones, it's actually this issue of knowledge and analysis, the critical thinking, which is the vital one. Because you need to be discerning, you need to have a critical spirit, critical thinking in order to tell news from fake news, information from disinformation. Picking up on the last point made by Mr. Ranucci and the professor just now, you can have culture, knowledge, you can have cultural awareness, which is a repository of knowledge which is passed on to the next generations. But you need to have some kind of filter. You need to filter out disinformation from the information. We are now in an environment of education overload because education is now outstripping the constraints. It's gone beyond the schoolyard. It's gone beyond the walls of the school, the home. It's happening on social media. It's happening online. There are new forms of communication which are only possible online. And all of this takes us way beyond the traditional concept of school and university. And so cultural institutions are just playing catch up. The bigger generation are way ahead there. They're strides ahead. They've left the rest behind. You might be amazed at what AI is doing now. Just wait. What's in store? What's just around the corner? And you know, I work at a university, Federico II University in Naples. It's one of the most ancient universities in the world. And I would say we as a university are way behind. We're eons behind in terms of the innovation which is happening in IT. In schools and university in Italy, everything's constrained within certain parameters. But we should have digital skills from primary. And we should start by teaching the teachers. There's a genuine problem here. There's a huge gap. It's not just the digital divide. Rifkind said, in terms of access, it's not just about a transfer of IT skills. It's about ensuring that technology can allow access to culture, access to knowledge, access to information. 20 years on, we've got the access. Got the access to the news, to the knowledge, to everything that's coming in, beep, beep, from all around the world, all at once. But it's all happening at once. That's extraordinary. But it means we've entered a whole new era. The 4 eras, we've gone from tribal existence through slavery. We are now in a whole new paradigm shift in terms of the model, the way in which we organise things in society. And that's not only about information. The information issue is a very serious one. When it comes to news, we need to know what the source is, know what the intellectual rigour is. What is the methodological rigour for presenting this news? The role of journalists is absolutely vital. We need proper, bona fide professionals here because we're all journalists now. Our students are journalists now. Generation Z young people are information bearers, news bearers now, for good or ill. The moment one person passes on a message through social media, the moment that message takes that channel and is passed on to others, we are people passing on news. We are journalists. Then you get the question of amplification. So professional journalists have an absolutely vital role right now, because scientific and methodological rigor is vital in order for sources to be trusted. Because nobody trusts sources anymore, because you've got so many, all sorts of sources saying all sorts of different things. And some of them are partially right. Some of them are sort of half right, half the time. So you need a whole discussion about what our concept of truth is. A traditional concept of truth is different now, because these are not appeals to the head, but to the heart, not to reason, but to feeling, to instincts. We're talking about tugging on the heartstrings, not appealing to the rigorous brain. And so we need methodological and scientific rigor. Our surveys indicate that young people are quicker at picking up on fake news than older people. 70% of young people, according to national and international research, say they are capable of recognizing fake news. I'm not sure all adults are as good. Because it's not just about what you know, it's not just about having knowledge, it's about language too, it's about understanding language. If you've got a sensationalist headline, if you've got an AI-generated image, if you're an expert in that, you can recognize it. But the problem is, how do you transfer culture, how do you transfer knowledge at all levels to young people so that they can gain the awareness that will allow them to filter out certain content and recognize the difference between news and fake news? Because fake news takes many forms. Sometimes it is designed to manipulate. Sometimes it's just wrong. It's just completely wrong information which somehow gets passed on. We need to be able to distinguish between those two. So picking up on what Mr. Ranucci and the earlier speakers have said, the only way that you can ensure you've got real news and you're passing on real news in this new hybrid online-offline life, what is real, what is online, in this infosphere where the concept of information is vital to everything that we try to do. It's a software culture. Software is vital. You've got the economy, science, you've got forms of communication happening at all levels. We can't turn our back on all of that. We can't do without it. But if we want to do anything about it, we have to educate, and that means we have to make people aware, and that means we need to share knowledge, and we need to help young people become aware of what the dangers are. Yes, technology has huge advantages, but young people need to be aware of what the dangers are too, and they need to have instruments that will allow them to filter out those dangers as they move forward with the opportunities.
Many thanks for your profound contribution, where you also underlined the need of education and education for skills in the digital atmosphere. Before I want to give the audience the opportunity to take the floor and to ask questions, I want to ask one question to all three of you. The legal framework of the European Union, with the Media Freedom Act, with the Digital Service Act, with an AI Act, is it sufficient from your point of view. And I also want to ask this question with recalling what the Vice President of the United States told us in Europe, that it's a censorship we are doing and it's no freedom of opinion we have. And he was not attacking disinformation, but he was attacking our approach of media freedom of speech. So who wants to start with this question? Yes, please.
Yes, they are proper acts to include the civic right for digital media literacy for citizens in Europe.
Who wants to add? Yeah.
Okay, so z mojej perspektywy to co jest
Well, for me, what is key when we come to the Digital Service Act, and I speak as a fact checker, DSA does not speak about disinformation. It talks about illegal content. Well, this is really black and white. So here what is mentioned is illegal content that has to be removed, harmful content, harmful for children. So I do agree with what has been said here. The situation today is not to give more information. I agree with other speakers that we have practically unlimited access to information. And, you know, if we wanted to, then we could verify information. And we have access to instruments to do it. Of course, it's regulated differently in different member states. But what we have to understand is that information appeals to us on an emotive level. So it appeals to us, to our emotions. So I think what we should have is a series of indicators to measure whether what we do is effective. I think this is important for me, and I know there are projects underway to measure what is happening. Of course, we don't know whether it's going to succeed or not. For young people, when I talk to youngsters, when I tell them, you know, there are those mechanisms so you could report illegal or harmful content, they are surprised. They don't know. And they don't use those mechanisms. So it's difficult to discuss it now. But when we talk about the freedom of media and when we're talking about what I do, fact-checking, well, fact-checking is presenting more information, enlarging the access to relevant, true information so that, you know, they can take decisions based on facts. So this is what we do. We promote original sources, and for us, independent journalism is key.
Il tema dell'informazione.
Well, the issue of information and regulating the digital tools for information is so complex that I don't think that we've really reached the kinds of rules yet that will ensure safety, control, and the necessary surveillance or monitoring, above all because of the issues which have just been mentioned, but also because of some darker industries which need, well, interests which need to be investigated with new tools. But everything is changing so quickly. We're on a pathway to digital technological progress, which is which is taking us along a route very quickly. What's valid now wasn't valid 5 years ago, and so we need rules which are flexible enough to take into account this flux and these changes. We need to try and anticipate what we're going to need in terms of tools for the new technologies, because the chances are in the next 2 to 3 years things are going to change again. For example, if we're talking about artificial intelligence, we'll see an incredible acceleration in development there. So the genuine challenge is, I think, to see how we tie rules in with education initiatives. We need to teach people how to use social media, digital media, and artificial intelligence, and that from primary schools. It's not just about transferring technical knowledge, it's about having the skills, the digital skills, and knowing the relationship between cause and effect when it comes to increasingly digitalized communication, which can be manipulated by, well, hidden powers, which can be very powerful indeed, and they have the knowledge to change and guide and influence the masses, the people. So we need not just rules, but obviously we also need an educational plan to cover this as well, to teach the citizens of tomorrow.
It's the opportunity for you who are present here in the room to ask questions, and I would like to give the floor to you here and afterwards. Yeah. Please.
Hello, thank you for hosting this panel, and thank you to the translators. My name is Claire Atkin. I run a digital advertising watchdog nonprofit. So much of this conversation comes down to, well, what is harmful content? What is disinformation? How do we fact check? I think that that is an important conversation, but I don't think that that is the most effective conversation to bring to heel the most powerful weapon for global authoritarianism ever invented. I'm talking about the internet, and I am in particular talking about the financial marketplace that runs the internet, that is the back room of the internet. I have a question, but I have to explain it quickly. There are 3 parties of value in the business of media. There is, of course, publishers. They are news publishers. They give information. They provide quality content. It doesn't have to be the news, but it's quality content. And there are readers, people who consume the content and who have consumer power to buy goods, and advertisers, the brands that bring the money, that provide the resources for the publishers in order to attract consumers. Okay. At no part in those 3 parties am I talking about technological middlemen. Now, we are in this crisis currently, according to all of the studies I have done over the past half-decade, because middlemen have taken over as intermediaries between these 3 parties. I'm talking about Google Ads, of course, and Facebook, of course, but also hundreds of other digital advertising technology companies that serve as a financial exchange, a financial market exchange between these 3 parties. They are trafficking in ads, which give propaganda legitimacy. They are trafficking in data, which allow us to increasingly surveil and target people who are susceptible to lies and hate. And, of course, money. My question for you, you mentioned platform economics. And there's been lots of talk today about the critical need for resources in journalism. This industry, the advertising industry, is a $1 trillion global and completely unregulated financial marketplace. What is your impression of what to do next about this, especially in regards to the DSA and other enforcement mechanisms? Thank you.
Thank you very much for these particular questions. As in the introduction, I wanted to raise the question of the business model behind all these platforms, and also economic dependence when you see that shift in the advertising market and how it also weakens the quality media. Who wants to contribute, answer that question, please?
È molto interessante.
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, but it's quite difficult to provide answers to it. It's complicated, but I think what I would say is that we need to think about how the economy is changing first and foremost. 20 years ago, the economy was essentially managed by the major energy companies or energy powers. Now, in the economy, it's Google, Facebook, Meta, and Microsoft who run the show. Apple as well, and Amazon. There's 5 of them, basically. And why are these the major economic powers that have supplanted those from before? Well, it seems to me that they're at the heart of the economic mechanism which now governs our lives. They manage our data. Oil for the 21st century is essentially data. And that data is that's what's marketed. It's the merchandise of our lives, and that's essentially like gold for them. Our activities on the internet is gold dust for them, and this is traced by those who manage the internet, and that is the equivalent of oil for the 21st century. It's the basis of our economy. Now, if that's the basis of our pretext, then these big 5 companies which deal with information and data are those that will shape the economy, or are shaping the economy now. Now, I'm not an economist, so I can't give an answer to your question now, but I think that this might provide some kind of insight in looking at the basis of the current situation. The data flow generates economic activity and also generates influence over tastes, consensus, votes, and the 5 main economic powers work in different ways, advertising, publicity, and so on. But they essentially operate on that basis. That's what where their interests lie.
Well, I want to answer from that user's perspective. That what I highlighted based on the research, that is the most complicated field for youngsters to understand, because they, for example, they follow the influencers online and still they don't realize what are those economic frameworks behind them. And I presume highly that that is the most difficult part at school for the teacher as well to teach about. It's not easy.
Ja może chciałem tylko dodać, moim zdaniem to jest bardzo cieszące.
Well, for my part, thank you very much for your question. It's a very important issue. As a fact checker fighting disinformation, I can say the following. In our work, we did identify different networks that were financing their actions in that way. I don't have a ready-made solution. I don't have solutions to propose. But of course, we have Google Ads. We have those financing sources. Back in 2023, 2003, we identified a network that were pumping, and bombarding with fake news and propaganda, and we've identified how this was generated. We contacted the platforms. We were invited to a very nice meeting. They said, okay, we will look into this. Nothing was done ever after. So, of course, this is, what should be done. Al Capone went to jail because of failure to pay taxes. And so follow the money, and we could get something done that way.
The opportunity to thank also our online audience, because we have now more than 300 people watching us. And I have 3 people that want to take the floor, and I want to give you, because in the order of 1, 2, 3.
Request.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes, thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. President. In consideration that my question is to Raffaella, we speak in Italian. Raffaella, buongiorno.
Good afternoon. My name is Giovanni Malolli from the Center for Media Pluralism and Freedom. I've been very struck by what you've said, particularly when you were talking about the importance of education in media. And my question is the following. Given the current situation with social media and what the PISA studies have shown, i.e. that leads to polarization simply because of their nature, we are reaching information flows which are very, very, very rapid. Is it possible to think that we can still have quality journalism, high quality journalism, given that situation? And what will happen in the long term? Is it possible for us to have journalism as an instrument? Because, of course, journalism is interested in truth, but also interested in complex issues. Is that still going to be possible? Well, in fact, you've hit the nail on the head there. You mentioned algorithms, essentially. We're going to need algorithms because of what they do. Essentially, they do tend towards polarization because contrast leads to viral spread. When an algorithm intercepts a different position, it pushes it out and increases its effect. So those who view content online, not just young people. The idea that it's only young people, though, is simply not true. In fact, the internet and websites are managed by adults, and often the young people don't actually like this. The problem here is that, in answer to your question, no. Given the current state of affairs and the way the digital era is regulated with the algorithms that manage the processes, genuine information, which is the result of rigorous analysis, and which restores the complexity to news, can't really be shifted round the web easily. Also because of the algorithms, which tend towards polarizing positions, because they want things to become viral. That's, I think, where we need to work. We need to understand how the algorithms work and how they can be used to generate plurality. The echo chamber effect, where you're in your own bubble and you're communicating and sharing information with other people who share similar views to you, Well, this is because of the way the algorithm works. It just confirms your opinions by placing you in a kind of information bubble. And that ensures that you receive reassurance because you only get information that you're interested in having. And that's what algorithms do. And the problem with regulation and some of the darker interests behind this is that if you're going to regulate these things, you have to understand them. You have to get involved. You have to dismantle these algorithms, fully understand how they work in order to change them. It's a difficult question, though.
No? Then I want to give you the opportunity to take the floor.
Yes, my name, je parle en français, mon nom c'est Stella Velli.
I'll be speaking French. I studied physics and IT, and I'm a member of the European Physical Society. I have an answer to the question which was asked, and the lack of freedom of expression and the fact that that doesn't exist in Europe. That's completely false. J.D. Vance has no idea of how the DSA works. The DSA analyzes how that algorithm works. That's an important thing to remember. And then I very much agree with what the lady said about having an artificial intelligence education policy in schools, universities, and so on. That's absolutely essential. And in that, we need to teach people to differentiate between fake news and news created by artificial intelligence, and also show them the limits of ChatGPT, because they do exist. And I also wanted to ask the following. I haven't really seen any studies which explain how the dependency on social media is created. One of the most aggressive algorithms is the one used by TikTok. It creates a dependency. Now, what are the physical or medical parameters or conditions which lead to that addiction or dependency? Now, if you know what they might be, if one knows what they are, then you can analyze the algorithm, see which priorities that algorithm puts forward. When you carry out a search on Google, you get 10 pages of answers, but everybody always only looks at the first results, and nobody goes to the 10th page to see what's there. And I think that's very important. A further subject to think about is that we need to create competition. We can't impose our rules on social media platforms which don't belong to us, because those who own them have a huge amount of money, and they're all to be found in North America. I think we need to set up a European social media platform and create that on the basis of our regulation.
Perhaps I could just say a couple of things that I think are interesting. Absolutely. As McClellan was saying before, I think technology involves affects our psyches and changes our behaviour, I think, in the way that we respond to the world around us. But when it comes to TikTok or social media more generally, I think it is very interesting that they do interact with our psychological and cognitive behaviors. Now, this is something I've been studying, and those in charge of advertising, those at the forefront of it, have in fact already adopted techniques from neuroscience so that they can really have a greater impact on individuals, so that they can persuade them to buy these products or to convince them to listen to these communications, this psychosensorial communication. This is something which happens at a more emotional level, not really a rational level, and that can have a greater impact on our independence than anything. So I think it's, absolutely fundamental. Thank you.
So I want to... Oh, sorry. Yes?
Chciałem tylko odpowiedzieć, że...
Well, my reply will be the following. When we talk about indicators, I think the problem is even more serious, because even the platforms don't have this awareness and this knowledge. We have internal reports in different companies, and what we read there, we see that they know what their objective is, to attract us to their platforms for as long as possible. But there have been meta reports on, how many sad reactions were generated, how many aggressive reactions were generated, and how it generates profit. This is what is scary, because, even those who create the algorithms do not know exactly what they are doing. So they have this black box, they train the algorithm, but they don't even know what the final result will be. But what I'm excited about is possible regulations that could be passed. If we have more insight, because we have no insight, we have no access. If you want to have access, you have to pay, it's very expensive. But if we, as investigative journalists, as fact checkers, we have access to this, then we can research it, we can test it, and we can find solutions.
So now this discussion has gone into personal level and cause and effect, which has roots in 18th century, talking about the user and the films affecting to the user. That tradition of research is very, very old. But I think the interest is the interplay with the personal, which is the mainstream in media education as well, in which the, the responsibility is thrown to the user, to the child, and to the teacher to develop media literacy. But there is a need of an interplay with the social, with the policy and regulation, because nothing happens at schools in nation countries if EU is not capable to set up any law-like and nations as well. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Finally, I want to give the floor to Sigfrido Ranucci, who maybe combines the first panel and the second panel with this question or with this contribution. Please.
Ci provo e intanto...
Well, I'll try. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. This is a very high-level debate, and it's fascinating to hear all of the things that the people in the second panel have said. I think it gives us a very good overview. I wanted to thank Ms. Kortelainen, because I think we're seeing a lot of what's happening here. We know, we're aware of what's happening. We know that this content is being created within this instrument. And I think for us, as Europeans, this is something we should be paying a huge amount of attention to. In Report, we've been looking at fake news and how it is churned out on social media. We created one and spread it on social media, and it was downloaded millions of times. It was forwarded by politicians as well.
No, devi venire qua. Vieni qua.
Sappiamo quanto questo
And we know just how much effect this has had on politics and on elections. Now, this, of course, wasn't a real little film, little clip. And I think something that you mentioned before, which was education and digital education, I think is incredibly important. It's vital that we teach future generations. Something else that I wanted to talk about, and here this relates to what Mr. Savonardo was saying. I think there's a huge problem that we need to tackle, and that is how to contain digital information. Now, we're boomers, more or less, young people, and we've lost the mic again, I'm afraid.
perdono il
So when young people lose their phones, it's the end of the world. And it's, I think, often in other countries, perhaps the situation is different, but I think in Europe we need to look at how we can manage this kind of thing.
Anything you want to add?
Questo è un tema talmente...
Yes, it's such a complex issue and so difficult. But yes, it's incredibly hard to tell who should be in charge of the governance of this at the moment. But I very much liked what you said there, because I think it's vital. The issue of memory, of digital heritage, of conservation. I think it's incredibly complex, both individually and collectively. We know that AI is extraordinary, it's incredible, it's organic. And it seems that the digital memory stays, it remains, it's permanent. But if you pull the plug, if you switch YouTube off, it's gone. Us, all of us individuals who use these instruments, we would lose our digital heritage, our digital memory. It means really a kind of it's a sensory extension of our lives. It's a different paradigm that we can look at this from, and it's not a kind of organic memory. It's something to do with technology, and if the technology goes, then it's gone as well.
So, as there are no more interventions, I want to thank our panel. We got a very impressive description and also very emotional. even about the whole sphere of issues connected with social media, and especially with the use by young people, and also with recommendations and concrete recommendations. So thank you very much. We are now coming not to the end, but to our final panel here on the podium. And I want to ask Anna Herold to join us, and Sandro Ruotolo to come up back again, that we can summarize what we have heard so far. And thank you very much once again to our three panelists. Thank you for your expertise. So, we are able to continue, und ich möchte das Wort an...
And now I'd like to pass the floor to the representative from the Commission. Anna Herold is the head of unit for audiovisual and media policy at DG Connect. Floor is yours.
Vielen Dank. Thank you so much, and thank you for having the Commission and this important debate. So I wanted to start by thanking the S&D group, and in particular the honorable members here present in this panel, in which I have the honor to participate, for organizing and bringing these important issues on the highest political agenda. We have heard a lot of concerning trends in both the panels. So there is a lot of bad news, now from unprecedented threats to free media, journalists, including their life, to terrible impacts that the new digital environment and the risks it poses for us, for all of us, but also including the young people, that of course are the future of Europe. But there's also good news in all of this, so I want to be an optimist. And what I see is that in the 20 years of my service in the European Commission, the importance of free media for our democracies has never been so high on the agenda. And of course, this is also thanks to this House that has been extremely active on these issues always. But now it has become really a shared concern of all the institutions. That's why I'm really happy that in this new mandate of the European Commission, you are starting, with putting this in the title of your event, free media, strong free information and importance for our societies. What is new in this Commission is, and I want to be very clear about this, that of course in this new geopolitical context, nobody, of course, contests that the free media are important for our societies and democracies. They basically, this was said, many times by the previous speakers, what we can get, the objective information and facts that high quality, independent journalism gives us is basically basis for our informed decisions, as citizens in the societies. But what is new is also that actually investment in independent media is also key for our security. We have been talking a little bit, some of the speakers were talking a lot about, protecting our information space, and maybe changing a little bit of focus. But what is really now a new element, especially when I see the discussions on media policies from the Commission's perspective, is that the importance of free, independent journalistic content, basically for ensuring democratic stability and then security also, in Europe and hopefully also elsewhere. So I know I don't have a lot of time, so I will simply give you a bit of an update, because of course I am, a boring civil servant, on what the Commission has been doing to basically bring life in these wonderful achievements that we have made in the last mandate that some were also acknowledged, and I thank you, some of the speakers, for this. So basically, implementation of things we have, and also a few elements for the future. So, and I have 3 in each basket, so it will be hopefully relatively quick and simple. So in terms of things we have done, I don't want to be exhaustive, but I will just highlight the 3 important elements. The European Media Freedom Act, this has been already said by many speakers, is a priority for this college, for this commission, in terms of its effective implementation, so that it doesn't stay, what is written on the paper, but is effectively complied with in the member states. We have launched a very serious dialogue with member states to make sure that they are ready for the effective application by the main deadline, which is August this year. We are conducting a series of meetings and also ask them questions, to understand, how the laws, how the legal frameworks already comply with EMFA, and if they don't comply, what they intend to do to make it reality by August this year. So this is an ongoing, quite exceptional exercise, because normally we don't do that, with member states so closely, especially not for regulations, no? So this is now ongoing, and we will be happy to report to the special group that was created, the EMFA working group here in the Parliament. We are also working on 2 other things very quickly. So the transition of ERGA towards this new media board, because this new media board of independent media regulators, I think we have a great tradition of independence, independent media, but also independent media regulation in Europe, as some of people, were reminding us. And we have now established this media board to help the Commission in making sure this new legislation is really effective. So we are busy basically making sure that the media board can be operational very quickly. We are also working on something which is in a way a testimony of the commitment of the European Union and the member states to the freedom of expression, the guidelines on the so-called Article 18. Those that followed EMFA know this. So these are safeguards for reputable media content against arbitrary removal or modifications online. So this is something very important to bear in mind, and we are working on guidelines to make sure that this mechanism will effectively help media, to act against platforms in case they would want to censor their editorial content. So this is for EMFA. More synthetically, we are also, our colleagues in DG Justice are also working intensively with the member states on the transposition of the so-called anti-SLAPP directive. This, this mechanism of these lawsuits, abusive lawsuits against journalists is in a way, a necessary component for journalists to let them work freely and without these obstacles. I don't need to explain why, because this was already exemplified in the discussions. So we are, so the colleagues are having intense interactions with the stakeholders, but also with the member states. So they organize a transposition workshop. This is a directive, so it will, of course, have to be implemented by the member states. And then we are also looking at another instrument that is a soft law instrument, the recommendation on safety of journalists that we have adopted back in 2021. And the good thing is that we did a study, an independent study that helped us to measure, what member states are actually doing, to make progress, because, it is nice, to say, things are going well, but we would like to be very objective and try to apply these key performance indicators we developed to measure progress of member states. We are also looking at safety of journalists, issues in the rule of law, and if we conclude that, there is not sufficient progress, we will not hesitate to look again at this recommendation, also in light of EMFA and what it has done to protect journalists, in particular their journalistic sources. So this is what we have been doing on things that we already have. But of course, there are important things to look towards in the future. As you know, the Commission has announced that it will come up with the so-called democracy shield to protect, this information space from interference. And this is also an occasion to not only to look, of course, at detection of disinformation and manipulation and strengthening our capacity to do so. So not only, really about defending ourselves, but also positively by proposing, measures to have access by citizens to free, independent media content, so anything that the media pillar of this initiative will be incredibly important, and that includes media literacy, because it's about, proposing, and making sure that the content can reach citizens, but it's also, of course, important that we understand, what we read, what we watch, to what we listen to. And there are two other elements that I just leave you with for the future. Of course, structural support to media. The European Parliament has been fundamental in making sure and building our, what we call now the cross-sectoral strand in Creative Europe, that basically federated, all the actions that we have on news media. It might be a drop in the ocean, but they are very effective. Things that we have been doing with the Media Pluralism Monitor, with the Leipzig Institute, are really fundamental. They might not, mean a lot of money. Things that we have been doing to fund the cross-border investigative journalism that you have been talking a lot about. So we have to think about the future, and it will be difficult because, of course, the demand for financial resources will be huge in view of the new geopolitical context we are in. But if we understand that media are crucial for security, that could also be understood in this context. And last but not least, we have another instrument that has not been mentioned today, but that could be very important to address certain issues that were addressed. So the issue of making sure that people counteract these negative effects of algorithms that were denounced. So the measures on prominence, visibility of journalistic content in the digital environment. This is something that we can act upon when we will be looking and evaluating this directive. And the same goes for the advertising issues that were mentioned by the colleague here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 minutes left.
Sorry.
Allora,
Sandro?
prima di dare
Okay. So before we get to the conclusions, there was just something I wanted to say, and I think this seminar's been incredibly important. And we don't have the time necessarily to do all of our conclusions, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone, and we as the socialists and Democrats need to come up with some kind of solution and proposals now. But thank you so much to everybody for having been here for the last 3 hours and having followed us. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank everyone very much for all of the contributions today, for all of your expertise that we've been able to benefit from. The challenges are clear, the need for action is clear, and you know that we are working on this in the Culture and Education Committee. We know where we want to get, we know what action we need to take. So thank you so much. And I'd like to thank all of you, because at this kind of event, often some people do leave, but we have had a constantly increasing number of people online. We're at 340 at the end of this, and we've got all of you to thank for it. Thank you so much for coming to speak. Thank you for all the questions that you've asked. Thank you for the topics that you've covered. And I've got one final word of thanks in conclusion for the Secretariat, because you've done a huge amount of work for this, I'm sure, selecting all of the experts as well. I think you've done that job incredibly well. So thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank the interpreters for their excellent work as well. Thank you.
Und es war der Beweis, dass
And that really is proof that we need to continue to work on this topic. It's incredibly important and lots of people are listening. So thank you very much. I hope, again, we'll have more opportunities to talk about democracy, media pluralism and media freedom. It's incredibly important. And final word, education, education, education.